At first glance, the idea sounds almost absurd. How can something you can't see, touch, or physically hold have real-world value? We grow up associating value with objects we can point to: a house, a car, a gold bar, a stack of banknotes. Even in the digital age, we still feel more comfortable when value is represented by something familiar, like a number in a bank account backed by an institution we recognize. And yet, the blockchain asks us to rethink all of this. It invites us into a world where value lives inside invisible data, quietly recorded across thousands of computers, secured by mathematics rather than walls or vaults. To understand why this invisible data matters, we need to slow down and examine what's actually happening beneath the surface. When people hear the word blockchain, they often think immediately of cryptocurrencies, price charts, and market speculation. But blockchain, at its core, is not about prices. It's about records. It is a system for writing information down in a way that makes it extremely difficult to change, fake, or erase. What gives blockchain its power is not that the data is flashy or visible, but that it is reliable. Imagine a notebook that's shared with thousands of people around the world. Every time something important happens, a new entry is written into this notebook. Everyone gets an updated copy, and no single person is allowed to rip out a page or secretly edit a line. If someone tries to cheat, the others immediately notice because their copies no longer match. This shared notebook is a simplified way to think about a blockchain. The entries inside it are the invisible data we're talking about: transactions, timestamps, digital signatures, smart contract instructions, and ownership records. On their own, these entries look unimpressive. They're just strings of numbers and letters. You can't hang them on a wall or put them in a safe. But just as a land deed isn't valuable because of the paper it's printed on, blockchain data isn't valuable because of its appearance. It is valuable because of what it represents and because of the trust it creates between people who may never meet. Consider how value works in the traditional world. If you own a piece of land, your ownership is recorded somewhere, usually in a government database or archive. You trust that record because you trust the institution maintaining it. But this trust has limits. Records can be lost, altered, corrupted, or abused. History is full of examples where ownership records were manipulated, whether through corruption, war, or simple human error. The value of your property depends heavily on the integrity of whoever controls the database. Blockchain flips this model upside down. Instead of trusting a single authority, you trust a system. The data is distributed, verified, and constantly checked by the network itself. No single actor has full control. This is why blockchain data can be invisible yet powerful. Its value comes from its structure, not its form. At this point, an important question arises. If blockchain data is just information, and information has existed forever, what makes this different? After all, databases, spreadsheets, and ledgers have been around for decades. The difference lies in finality. In most traditional systems, records can be changed. An administrator can update a database. A company can revise its logs. Even if changes are tracked, the possibility of alteration remains. On the blockchain, once data is confirmed and added to the chain, changing it becomes practically impossible without controlling the majority of the entire network. This transforms data from something flexible into something firm. This firmness is what allows invisible data to carry real-world weight. When a transaction is written to the blockchain, it's not just a message saying, "I sent you something." It's a cryptographic proof that the event occurred at a specific time, under specific conditions, and was validated by the network. That proof doesn't rely on trust in a company, a government, or an intermediary. It relies on math, consensus, and transparency. Let's make this more concrete. Imagine two strangers in different countries exchanging value. In the traditional system, they need banks, payment processors, and legal agreements to feel safe. Each intermediary adds cost, delay, and complexity. On the blockchain, the invisible data of a transaction can replace much of that machinery. Once recorded, both parties can independently verify that the transaction happened. No phone calls, no paperwork, no waiting days for confirmation. The data itself becomes the guarantee. This is where the concept of real-world value begins to emerge. Value isn't only about physical presence. It's about usefulness, reliability, and shared belief. A banknote has value because people believe it does. A contract has value because it can be enforced. Blockchain data earns value because it can be trusted without asking permission from a central authority. Another layer of this story involves ownership. In the digital world, copying is effortless. A file can be duplicated endlessly, which makes digital scarcity difficult to achieve. Blockchain introduces a way to define ownership over digital assets using invisible data. When ownership is recorded on-chain, it becomes clear who owns what even if the asset itself is purely digital. This principle underlies everything from cryptocurrencies to digital art, from tokenized real estate to decentralized identities. What makes this especially fascinating is that the blockchain doesn't care what the data represents. It treats a financial transaction, a contract clause, and a proof of identity in the same way, as data to be verified and stored. The meaning comes from how humans choose to interpret and use that data. When societies agree that a specific type of blockchain record represents ownership, access rights, or value, that agreement turns invisible data into something economically real. As we move deeper into this topic, it becomes clear that blockchain is less about technology and more about coordination. It is a new way for humans to agree on the state of reality without relying on a single referee. The data may be invisible, but the consequences are not. Businesses are built on it. Fortunes are made and lost through it. Legal systems are beginning to acknowledge it. Entire communities organize around it. By the end of this exploration, the initial question begins to feel less mysterious. Invisible data on the blockchain has real-world value because it solves a fundamental problem: how to create trust at scale in a digital world. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the specific principles that give this data its power, and examine how transparency, immutability, and decentralization transform abstract information into tangible economic and social value. Have you ever wondered how invisible data, just ones and zeros on a computer, can suddenly become worth real money? It's not magic. It's a carefully designed system, an architecture of trust, that makes it all possible. This system is the heart of blockchain, and it's what turns abstract information into something valuable and powerful in our world. At the very core of this architecture is a principle called immutability. Think of it like this. Once a piece of information is recorded on a blockchain and confirmed, it's set in stone. It becomes a permanent part of a historical record that can't just be erased or changed. Trying to alter a past entry would require an insane amount of computing power, making it practically impossible as the network grows. This gives blockchain data something traditional databases struggle with: credible finality. This idea of finality completely changes how we interact with digital information. In our usual online world, there's always an asterisk. A transaction can be reversed, a record can be corrected, a history can be rewritten by someone with enough authority. But on a blockchain, changing things isn't a simple admin task. It requires a massive consensus. This genius move shifts trust away from people or institutions and embeds it directly into the technology itself. The data is reliable not because someone promises it is, but because the system is built to resist change. Working hand in hand with immutability is transparency. Most public blockchains are like an open book. Anyone can look at the transactions, the balances, and the history. Now you might think, wait, what about privacy? Well, the system is clever. Blockchain addresses aren't directly linked to real-world identities. So, what you see is the behavior of an account, not the biography of a person. This balance is key. It lets everyone verify that the system is working honestly, without exposing anyone's personal information. This transparency is a huge deal for creating value. In many traditional markets, information is not shared equally. One party often knows more than the other, and middlemen can exploit this to their advantage. Trust is fragile. On the blockchain, the rules are public, and the ledger is open for inspection. You can check for yourself if a transaction happened, if a contract worked as promised, or if a digital asset is truly scarce. This openness cuts down the cost of building trust and makes it easier for people to engage with each other confidently. The third pillar holding everything up is decentralization. In a typical system, all the data is controlled by one central authority. This can be efficient, but it's also a huge risk. That single point of control can be hacked, censored, or corrupted. Blockchain flips the script by distributing control across thousands of independent computers all over the world. No single person or group decides what's true. The truth emerges from the collective agreement or consensus of the network. Why does this matter so much? Because value is tied to resilience. A system that can be shut down or manipulated by one entity is inherently fragile. Blockchain data, on the other hand, is built to survive. It exists as long as the network exists. Even if some participants go offline, the data remains intact and accessible. This durability gives blockchain records a strength that supports long-term value, whether that value is financial, legal, or even social. Once you have these foundations in place, immutability, transparency, and decentralization, you unlock something truly transformative: programmability. This is where smart contracts come in. They turn static data into active, automated logic. Instead of just recording what happened, the blockchain can now execute agreements based on preset conditions. A smart contract can automatically release funds when a job is done, enforce a penalty if a rule is broken, or distribute ownership according to a formula. And the best part? These contracts are enforced by code, not by courts or companies. They run exactly as they were written every single time. This is a fundamental shift from how we normally do things. Traditional contracts rely on people to interpret and enforce them, which can be slow and subjective. On the blockchain, enforcement is automatic and built-in. The invisible data of a smart contract becomes a self-executing promise. Its value isn't just in the words, but in its certainty. You don't have to trust the other person's intentions. You just have to trust that the code will do its job. With this understanding, it's easier to see how blockchain makes something like tokenization possible. Tokenization is simply the process of representing rights or ownership as data on the blockchain. A token is just a digital record in that shared, trusted ledger. It might represent a unit of currency, a share in a company, a piece of digital art, or even a claim on a physical object like a house. The token itself is just invisible data, but its implications are very real and tangible. When you tokenize an asset, it gains incredible new properties. It becomes easy to transfer across the globe in seconds. It becomes divisible, so you can own a tiny fraction of something valuable. And it becomes programmable, allowing you to attach automated rules for royalties or usage rights. All of this power emerges from simple data entries that, on the surface, look no different from any other transaction on the blockchain. Another amazing benefit is coordination. Blockchain allows massive groups of people to coordinate their economic activities without needing a central boss. Think of decentralized finance platforms or decentralized autonomous organizations. They all run on a shared set of data that every participant trusts. This shared trust allows for collective action on a scale that would normally require a huge, expensive institutional framework. What's really remarkable is that this coordination is completely voluntary. No one is forced to accept blockchain data as valuable. People choose to use it because it works. It reduces friction, cuts out middlemen, and offers alternatives to old systems that are often slow, opaque, or exclusive. And as more and more people choose to rely on this data, its value grows stronger through network effects. The more people that use it, the more useful it becomes for everyone. Of course, this value isn't guaranteed. Blockchain is still an evolving technology. Systems can fail, smart contracts can have bugs, and speculation can create bubbles. But these risks don't invalidate the core principles. They just remind us that we're still in the early days of a complex new field that blends technology, economics, and human psychology. So to recap, that invisible data on the blockchain gains real-world value because it's built on an architecture of trust. It's trustworthy, transparent, resilient, and programmable. It replaces needing to trust a person or company with the ability to verify for yourself. It allows strangers to collaborate, transact, and build new systems together. In doing so, it transforms abstract information into a solid foundation for real economic and social change. Now that we understand the how, in our next video we'll look forward. We'll explore how this invisible, valuable data might shape the future of finance, identity, and ownership, and the challenges we need to overcome to ensure its value lasts. Have you ever thought about what really gives something value? For centuries, it was something you could see and touch, like gold, or something backed by a powerful institution like a bank. But what if the most valuable things in our future economy are completely invisible? Let's talk about blockchain and how its invisible data is quietly building a new economic reality. When most people hear blockchain, they think of cryptocurrencies, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. If we zoom out, we see that blockchain isn't just a new way to store data. It's a new way for society to agree on what's true, create trust, and work together on a massive scale. This invisible data is now weaving itself into the real world, often without us even realizing it. One of the biggest changes is happening in finance. The traditional financial system is like a massive, slow-moving machine with tons of middlemen, banks, clearinghouses, auditors. Each one is there to check and double-check information. This adds time, cost, and risk at every step. Blockchain changes the game. It creates a single, shared, and tamper-proof record book. The data itself becomes the ultimate source of truth. When everything from who owns what to how a transaction settles is built directly into the system, all that friction just starts to melt away. But this revolution goes way beyond money. Think about your identity in the digital world. It's scattered everywhere. You give your personal information to social media sites, online stores, and government agencies, with very little say in how it's used or protected. Blockchain offers a different path: self-sovereign identity. Imagine having a digital wallet that holds verified credentials like your driver's license or university degree that you control. You can prove you're over 21 without showing your birth date, or prove you have a degree without sharing your grades. The data stays private or invisible, but its truth can be verified instantly. Here, value comes from control and selective sharing, not from giving everything away. The same idea applies to the things we buy. We all want to know where our food comes from, if our clothes were made ethically, or if a product is genuinely organic. Blockchain can create a permanent, unchangeable record of a product's entire journey from the farm to the store shelf. You might never see this long chain of data yourself, but its existence changes everything. It forces companies to be more accountable, makes it much harder to sell counterfeit goods, and builds a new kind of trust, one based on verifiable facts, not just clever marketing. Then there's the frontier of governance, how we make decisions together. We're seeing the rise of DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations. These are basically groups or companies that run on rules written into code on a blockchain. Decisions are made through transparent voting, and the rules can't be secretly changed by a few people at the top. It's a radical experiment in how organizations can function. The power structure shifts when the rulebook is open for everyone to see and audit. The invisible code creates very visible consequences. Of course, this future isn't here just yet. There are some big challenges to overcome. One is scalability. As more and more data gets added to blockchains, the networks need to get faster without sacrificing security or their decentralized nature. Another huge challenge is privacy. A public, transparent ledger is great for trust, but what if you don't want your entire financial history to be public? New technologies like zero-knowledge proofs are being developed to solve this. They let you prove something is true without revealing the secret information itself. It's like proving you have the password to a secret club without ever saying the password out loud. This suggests that invisibility itself is becoming even more valuable. Regulation is another piece of the puzzle. Laws and legal systems move much slower than technology. When data exists everywhere and nowhere at once on a global network, who is in charge? Who is liable if something goes wrong? For blockchain to truly go mainstream, we need to figure out how it fits into our existing legal and social structures. But maybe the biggest hurdle isn't technical or legal. It's human. Technology doesn't create value on its own, people do. This invisible data only becomes meaningful when we, as a society, agree to trust it. That doesn't happen overnight. It's built through education, positive experiences, and seeing it work time and time again. Think about it, people were skeptical of the internet, online shopping, and digital banking at first. What seems strange and abstract today often becomes the normal, everyday foundation of tomorrow. In a way, blockchain is just the next chapter in a very long story about information. It's like the shift from spoken promises to written contracts, or from paper files to digital databases. Each step required a new way of thinking. Blockchain asks us to take one more leap, to accept that truth. And value can be guaranteed by math and collective agreement, not just by a physical object or a central authority. The invisible data on the blockchain isn't flashy. It doesn't ask for your attention. But it's quietly creating systems where strangers can transact with confidence, assets can move across the globe in seconds, and contracts can execute themselves perfectly. Its value isn't in what it looks like, but in what it makes possible. As this technology continues to grow and improve, the question will shift. We won't be asking why invisible blockchain data has value. Instead, we'll probably be wondering how we ever managed to run our complex global world without it. In an age built on digital connections, the ability to create trust without total visibility might just be the most valuable innovation of our time.